Hello and welcome to PLUTUS IS. My name is Rishabh and today we are going to start with the topic that is Karl Marx. Now if we simply talk about Karl Marx class, what you need to understand that in UPSC Sociology syllabus there are few topics which we have to learn in detail in order to answer the question. But sometimes you also need a political and intellectual background of a political scholar to understand the things in a totality or in a panoramic way. So in today's topic we are going to understand that what is historical dialecticism, right? So what you need to understand that if you need to understand the dialectical theory of Karl Marx, you need to understand Hegel first, right? Because Karl Marx has adopted his theory of dialectical materialism from Hegel, and Hegel gave or propounded a theory of dialectical idealism, right? So we will understand the theory which was given by Hegel first. So what we need to understand with respect to the theory propounded by the Hegel, that Hegel says that a man's purpose in the society is to attain the consciousness, is to attain the highest consciousness on the planet. If that man is able to attain the highest consciousness, and the consciousness, he said, the man has to attain the Geist. Now this means he needs to realize that why he is being sent on this planet. So it means he is saying that he has to attain the highest consciousness in order to understand the purpose of the life. And he says, how do we achieve this consciousness? How do we achieve such sort of awareness in our life? We will attain this consciousness by the ideas, and this will result into a dialectical movement. Now suppose you argue about a political scheme with your friend, and within the argument you get another side as well. Now suppose you are this individual and you are arguing with your friend. Now you are this person and this is your friend. Now when you are arguing regarding a political scheme, you are giving some arguments. He is also giving you some counter arguments. Hegel considered this as thesis, antithesis. And after you are done with the argument, you will reach to a conclusion, and that is considered as a synthesis. So he says the highest level of consciousness is achieved through the dialectical movement. But Karl Marx was not satisfied with this approach. He says that if we really want to understand the level and the purpose of the life and the purpose of the society, we should think about the things which are existing, which are physical in nature, which can be seen, which can be touched. Whereas Hegel is simply talking about the ideas. He is talking about the consciousness of an individual. So Karl Marx adopted the idea of the dialecticalism, but he incorporated economics into it. That is why it is called dialectical materialism. So we are going to look into the materialistic society, that how society has evolved. Now the Karl Marx says that since man has created the society, and man itself or himself is a product of the society. It is the man who has created history, and it is the man who has been created by the history. It means a social being is being determined by the society, whereas you are made to think that you are changing, you are bringing change into the society, but actually it is the society which is trying to bring change in you. This is what Karl Marx says. So he says when the man has started the production process, Karl Marx consider that the production is a social enterprise. A man needs to cooperate with other individuals in order to produce some goods. So he says that the society moves through 6 stages. The first stage is the primitive communism. Karl Marx simply says the first stage is the primitive communism, and he says that at this stage of the society there will be no conflict between the classes, because there are no classes in the primitive communism. Class is a group of people who share the same materialistic condition. Like there is a worker class and there is a industrialist or the owner class. Their material conditions are opposite. Now think about the material conditions of Mukesh Ambani and think about the condition of a worker which is working in the factory of Mukesh Ambani. Their materialistic conditions are opposite, right? So there are two classes when we are talking about it, but we are living in the capitalist society. Now if I simply talk about the very early stage when the society was created, when the man started producing the goods and services, there was no classes at that time. And when there was no classes, there was no conflict between the because there is no class, so there would be no conflict. So there was no conflict between the society. So Karl Marx says society moves through the 6 stages. So the first stage is the primitive communism, where you will find the early man is not fighting with the other persons because they are cooperating with each other to produce, and production is a social enterprise. Then you will find that after the primitive communism we have come into the surplus society. In the surplus society you will find the person who has got or who possess more goods. The person who possess more goods has a different material condition, and the person who has less good will of course will be considered as a person who has a lesser material condition or a lesser materialistic status. So now comes the concept or the emergence of the class. Classes emerged because of the surplus production of the good. Earlier in the primitive communism, the land was communally owned. But now land is not communally owned. You have your own property, we have our own property, right? You cannot transgress into someone else's property, otherwise they are going to call police upon you. This is what we have learned so far. So after the primitive communism, we have seen the emergence of the slave society. Now in the slave society, there will be of course 2 classes, slaves, and then we have the masters. The master owns the slaves. Now there will be 2 classes, and after you will find that there are different conditions. They both do not share the same material condition. And whenever there will be a contradiction and conflict in the society, they are going to resolve it, they are going to resolve it, and the result is the synthesis. Thesis, antithesis, and the synthesis. So when there will be a conflict between the 2 classes, a new mode of production will emerge. So after the slave society, there comes the feudal society. Why this has come? This is the synthesis part, right? What Hegel has said, you will attain the consciousness by the dialectical movement. So if you understand, give me a second. So if you understand that this person is saying thesis, this person is saying antithesis, and what do we get? Synthesis. So there is a conflict. Whenever you will find conflict between 2 classes, there are going to be a new mode of production. So what we have seen, that because there is a conflict between the slave and the master, because slaves are producing goods, and you know who is the actual owner of this good? The master who owns the slave. राइट। जो गुलाम है, उसने कोई भी मजदूरी करके कोई प्रोडक्ट बनाया है, उस प्रोडक्ट का मालिक भी यहां पर कौन होगा, जो गुलाम जिस मास्टर का है, राइट। तो ये प्रोडक्ट कुछ भी बना ले, इसका जो मालिक होगा वो मास्टर ही होगा, राइट। तो बिकॉज देयर इज इनहेरेंट कॉन्फ्लिक्ट बिटवीन द टू क्लासेस, of course there is going to be a change in the structure of the society. And after this slave society, now the feudal society emerges. In the feudal society, the Karl Marx talks about two types of classes, and he gives two German terms, and the two German terms are bourgeois, right, and the second is the proletariat. Bourgeois is the industrialist or the capitalist class, and the proletariat is the working class. Now they own the factor of production. Bourgeois is the one, those who own the factor of production. And you know, if you have read class 9th economics, we know factor of production means land, labor, capital. These are the factors of the production. And they are the working class, those who work with the factors of the production. So he said there is an inherent conflict between the bourgeois and the proletariat. When there is inherent conflict between them, right, in the feudal, actually I am talking about the capitalist society. In the feudal society you will find another classes, that is the land owning class and the peasant, right. Actually I am talking about this as a capitalist society. Then we have the first of all there is primitive communism, then we have the slave society, then we have the feudal society, and after the feudal society we have the capitalist society. So actually I bypassed the feudal society. We have the land owning class, and then we have the peasants here, and then we have the clergy. Clergy is the one who actually dictates what to do. So they are religious cleric who dictates the king that how to maintain rule and order in the society. So the peasants are the one who is doing all the work. Peasants are the one who is doing all the work, and they are the people who are paying most of the taxes. And since they are paying most of the taxes, they are left with very less money. And who is enjoying in the society? It is the clergy and it is the land owning classes. Now they are earning money on the expense of the peasants. So there was an inherent conflict between them, and that is why you will see when there is inherent conflict between the two classes, there will be change in the structure. So the Karl Marx simply explains, because there was an inherent conflict, that is why French Revolution occurred in 1789. Though Karl Marx was born in 1818, but he explains that why this is the reason that why French Revolution has occurred, because of the inherent conflict between the two classes. That was the clergy, that was the peasant, right, that was the king. King was actually the major class who was dictated by the clergy. Now after the decline of the feudal class, we have seen the emergence of the capitalist society. After the decline of the feudal society, we have seen the emergence of the capitalist society, where we have seen again two classes, and the two classes were bourgeois and proletariat. And the Karl Marx simply says that when the working class will realize that they are being exploited by the bourgeois, then again a revolution will come. Then after the revolution, he will say that there will be a dictatorship of proletariat. That is why he says that then comes the socialism and then comes the communism. Right, class? So we have the primitive communism, that is the first stage of the society. Then we have the slave society, that is the second stage of the society. Third is the feudal society. Fourth is the capitalist society. Fifth is the socialistic society. And sixth is the communist society, where the proletariat will become the dictator. Karl Marx simply explains that this is how the society is going to evolve. Whereas Karl Marx died in the 19th century itself, but nobody believed Karl Marx until the Russian Revolution happened in 1917. And yes, there was a communist society, and the Karl Marx word became true at that time, where in Russia, in the Soviet Union, where you will find that the land was communally owned by the people. So yes, Karl Marx word came true, but now the Karl Marx idea seems utopian after the disintegration of the Soviet Union in the 1991. So this is how the Karl Marx explains the dialectical materialism, that this is how, when there will be a contradiction between the two classes in the society, a new structure is going to emerge, right? A new structure of the society will emerge. So now we are currently in the capitalist society. If we simply talk about the Western societies, where you will find there are glaring gaps between the two classes, right? So this is how you have to understand the concept. In the next class, we are going to discuss about the mode of production and the alienation, right? How Karl Marx sees the working class becomes alienated in the production process. And we will also understand the view of other scholars such as Robert Blohner on the alienation. Thank you and stay tuned.